Jason, the floor is yours.
You want me to stand for this?
No, you don't need to. Talk about, the required artifact, right? Right now, you're probably the only one of the three of us who's building roadmaps.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so it's interesting. Like I said, in my business, which is kind of enterprise financial and purchasing services, SaaS services, you have to always sell not only what you obviously can do now, what they can get for their investment, but you always have to sell the vision of what is coming down the line with features. And so, we talk about that certainty, and Steve's right. Like, the only thing that you can be very certain is what is coming up in the next quarter. And so it's an interesting kind of game that everybody in my competitive space is playing, saying, this is where we're going to be in a year and a half. And the customers are taking a gamble if they are evaluating a provider based on something that is in a longer term roadmap. They really are taking a gamble, because at some point that could completely change, not in their benefit. I've been in a customer situation with a current customer, and they said, listen, I don't want you to go up there and even show me your roadmap, because if anything in that roadmap is not in line with what I want to be doing operationally, I'm going to get upset. So I was like, I will not show you the roadmap. So they were actually a smart customer, going, I don't want to think about the future. What I want to do is take complete use of what's currently available today, and let's talk about that. And so that was actually an intelligent customer, a very large organization, Fortune 500. But many times when you go into a net new opportunity, salespeople have to come equipped with this roadmap, because they are being asked for it. Because I believe that at some point, salespeople have trained these SaaS providers to think about what's coming in the future and start investing into the future, not into what we've already developed.
It's interesting.
I would add to that a little bit, is that, when you have an existing customer to your SaaS solution, they want to have influence over your roadmap. So instead of giving the roadmap, they want to tell you, this is what I need coming up. This is what you're going to give me is great. That's really good. This is what I'm going to need next. And so as the product person, you want to take in multiple customers in order to define what those priorities are.
Well, and so I can wax poetic on this, in a growth strategy, product strategy type concept, right? Part of it depends on where you are maturity wise in your industry, right? If you are on the early end of the life cycle of your curve, you need to be more listening to the non-customers, right? The people who haven't bought yet, to see how you can get them there. What's the value of if they're already your customer and there's high switching costs, what's the value of doing what they ask, right? to the company. You need to figure some of those things out. So I think it depends on where you are.
I mean, the counter of what Jason was saying is that when you're trying to go after a new customer, they want to see your roadmap, and what they're really doing is they're doing comparison shopping.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing. Is that, okay, now I have multiples that I'm testing against. Okay, let me see what each one is planning on doing, and then I know who I can align to. And then if I'm gonna actually buy from you now, what pressure can I put on you to make it happen?
Have either of you ever done analyst relations with Gartner, Forrester, those types of people?
Yeah, I have, in both of them. Yeah.
Roadmaps are one of the critical things for your magic quadrant, right? The magic quadrant is completeness of vision and ability to execute.
Vision. Yeah.
Right. So the roadmap is giving you your vision and where it's going. Are you going where we think it should be going? But the ability to execute, that's where you should be having a retrospective roadmap, saying, okay, last year when we talked to you, we said we were going to do this, this, and this. Here's what we did, this, this, and this. The roadmap, if you do it well, should give you that context to have the retrospective to show people, customers, analysts, whoever it may be, we deliver, we execute on what we said we're going to do. So
the execute is really about signing deals. It's not necessarily delivering on the vision as far as that axis. But when I was doing AR and running product management and running marketing at a smaller company, and we were in the MQs. And it is a game. You have to be able to listen to the analysts to see what they think is going on in the industry and where you should be going. And then you need to give them a roadmap that kind of reciprocates that.
Yeah. Well, because part of it is saying, oh yeah, great idea, Art.
Yeah. I'm like, Exactly. Like, that was really smart of you to go where I said that we should be going, but then you don't ever really deliver on it because it was coming from an analyst anyway. And so then you have different roadmaps for sales. And when I always position roadmaps for a sales presentation, I always had to look at the RFP to go, okay, what are the themes of the RFP? What is important to this particular prospect? And make sure it's a balance of not telling them that we don't have that, like the functionality that they're asking for is in the future because they do want to invest in that. But at the same time, we don't want to put things on a roadmap that is so far from what their actual focus is and what they value in their processes. So it is a balance of kind of, we do have some of this, but there's also more enhanced stuff coming up. And so I would actually look at all of our backlog and our queues and go and pull strategically out what would be relevant for that particular prospect, instead of just a generic kind of global company roadmap that doesn't speak to the prospect at all. So you almost become a roadmap sales guy.
Yeah. I don't think Steve would say that's a job that project management should be doing.
No, but it's
Roadmap sales guy.
in a smaller organization, it's almost necessary.
You're taking your roadmap and just, shopping it around to see who will bite. Is that what you're saying?
No,
well,
adapting
it's
it
like
to the sales points, what they say is relevant to them. Sort of like you change your resume when you're applying to a job to highlight the stuff they're looking for.
Right. It's not wrong, but it's product marketing is what it is.
So, Greg, it's interesting because a lot of Jason's example and what we talked about was what I'll call downstream, right? From product to the customer. And a lot of what you talked about was upstream. Maybe we talk about internal, external. Would upstream versus downstream almost in the use cases be a better way to talk about it?
I agree. I agree with that, because you have to tailor what your roadmap is saying to your audience.
Yeah.
So, who's actually interpreting your roadmap? The details, you may have a lot more details in your roadmap on the now part, and then maybe the next quarter that you're going to be showcasing to internals, because there's so many other dependencies that people really need to do their work internally. But boy, God forbid, don't showcase that one outside, because you're going to need to boil it up for sales or for others that would have some type of conversation, sales, customers, things like that, that you need to boil them up. You can't get into too many of these details, then it gets confusing, and then well, what does that mean and all that. So it's just it is definitely internal, external, but I would also caution that the details you put in roadmaps should not be super detailed.
Yeah, well, especially if they're external.
Well, even internal, like, there's a balance I think that product managers really need to make with what detail is actually in their roadmap.
Yeah.
So there's a balance there, because you get too detailed, now everybody's got an opinion. All you're going to be doing is just roadmap explanations as opposed to getting on with it.
I need to figure out a way to write my follow-up questions for this during the session, because Greg, that would have been a great follow-up session. It's like the balance of detail versus not,
Yeah. And I think and it's one of those, I think that's a socialization conversation you have, within the companies, and every single one of them is going to be a little different, big companies versus mid-size versus small.
Yeah.
And, as Jason was saying, when you're actually in a smaller company, a product manager has got multiple hats.
Well, Greg, I think you're onto something. I think the most important piece of the roadmap, and maybe this is a follow-up question, Grant, in any of your audience, is the why. And that does get dropped all the time. Maybe product managers shouldn't be creating external roadmaps. Maybe product marketing should be leading that, because they should be really focusing on the positioning and the why. As far as delivering it to the market, because you do forget about the why. And when you're looking, especially in an 18-month roadmap, and what you want to be positioning to your audience, especially if it's your market, your customers, your analysts, is this is why we're doing this. Like, this is the value we're going to bring to our market. This is the markets we're going to enter, and this is why we're doing this.
So I think we're going to have some chances to dig a little more in that in some of the later questions. If not, I'll give you some more floor to do that.